Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are. Welcome to today's Ag Market Blast with myself and the wonderful Angie Setzer, who has just joined, so I can just quickly add her to be a co-host. Send invite. Bosh! The invite is somewhere on the internet, somewhere in the ether. So hopefully she gets that. Hey, there she is.
I am Angie. I identify as Angie, at least for the day.
Why? What else is going on? Tell me.
Nothing. I mean, I just feel like, some days maybe I'm going to want to wake up and be someone else. But
So
so far,
is this a
still
bit like
Angie.
me at weekends when I put my high heels on?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that, but just a little different. I don't know.
Well,
Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to not know anything about commodities. Well, I shouldn't wonder that because I kind of sometimes feel like I don't. So,
yeah, right.
yay. Happy Wednesday.
Yeah, let me quickly get the legals out of the way. Nothing discussed on this spaces session constitute trading or investment advice or infers any kind of endorsement by PIQ Global Limited, traders PIQ or PIQ Suite, and that includes the host, which is the awesome Angie and myself, Ryan. So yeah, what's
The
occurring?
awesome Ryan as well. So lots of fun stuff, right? Soybeans are currently trying to impale themselves on whatever they can find at this point, like just not really feeling the greatest. And so I've kind of talked about this before, and we'll pay attention to it, and we really have to see. The low on the November contract was 9.55, and that was set in the middle of August. And I feel like the January board's kind of like, hey, that's in my sights. Let's see what we can do with it. And so, yeah, it's ugly and it sucks. It's not a lot of fun to talk to growers about soybeans right now. And so, part of the reason behind it, or what's getting a lot of the attention, obviously, is that Brazil's weather is great. Conditions look awesome. There's a few pockets of spots where it's a little dry here or there across Argentina. There is some concern that Argentina could turn off dry as well here over the next few weeks. But from an overall standpoint, folks look at South America and they're like, no problems. If Argentina does have a problem, then Brazil will probably make up for it with a couple million metric ton here or there. And so that's getting a lot of this is why soybeans are going lower. I would venture that part of the reason, or probably now what's really resulted in this next leg lower in beans, is more of the shit show that is happening in Brazil from an economic standpoint, like to put
Yeah,
it mildly. It appears,
yeah, right. I think you're being very polite there.
I think that's a nice way to say it. And so, you've seen Brazil's currency collapse to a record low. You've seen it lose over 20% in 2024. You've got a battle ongoing between President Lula and the central bank and central bank members, who are saying, the central bank members are saying that interest rates are going to need to work towards 16%, by the middle part of next year. Like, you're going to see 200 basis point rate increases take place after the first of the year, is the message from the central bank. And so Congress is supposedly supposed to be figuring out how to balance this budget. They've got some major issues with Lula wanting to kind of throw money in, of course, to help with poverty and some of these other things. And like, one of the most conflicting things, and this isn't my wheelhouse, so like I'm going to lean on other experts when it comes to kind of determining what it all means. But one of the most
Yeah.
interesting things is that Brazil's economy actually isn't terrible. Like, their jobless rate's relatively low, I believe. Like, they've got some good positive things that are going on. And Lula tries to say that it's the interest rates that are causing the problems, and the central bank is saying that it's Lula and his spending that is causing the problems. And so neither the twain shall meet, it appears. And I don't know what it means, when we have a new central bank governor come in after the first of the year. I don't know what it means, if Brazil's lower house and their Senate are going to be able to pass some of these budgets that they're working on, and maybe if we do see a cut in spending or not. But like, from an overall standpoint, economics 101 is that the weaker the currency, the cheaper the goods into the world market. Like, it's just a natural thing. Like, if you see Brazil's currency super weak, then the expectation is everyone's just going to puke soybeans into the world market because they have to. I want to caution that. You know what I mean? Like, first off, Brazil has the ability to store a lot of bushels. Like, they've built a lot of infrastructure. They're not afraid to use silo bags. Like, they have the ability to put a crop away. We've seen it. That's part of why, basis rebounded as quickly as what it did after soybean harvest last year and some of these other things. And so, I feel like right now, over the next 2-3 weeks, you're going to see more pressure on soybeans, or the ability to really kind of create these hyperbolic sort of soybean outlooks where, oh my God, Brazil's going to dump going to be this major seller into this world market. They're going to give them away. And I don't know if that's necessarily the case. But In the meantime, because we don't have any other stories and the bear is in charge of Christmas, like here we are, we're down and we're probably going to test the low side. And we just really have to watch because if the dumpster fire continues or it worsens, which it could, you're going to see further weakening of Brazil's currency and that's probably going to continue. It's just an easy trade. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
pound soybeans.
it's kind of,
Like,
it does feel like the path of least resistance, right?
yes, it writes itself, you could say.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing to be paying attention to and the thing to watch. Point two is China and what the heck they're doing. We are seeing them make adjustments to their currency. We're hearing about, some additional Biden administration, trade restrictions and, things that are kind of popping up and some tit for tat, some back and forth. The China and the EU are having some issues. We're hearing about China they want to stop selling corn out of government reserves. Like that was the new headline this morning to try to support prices. And I'm like, honestly, I don't know if they've been selling more than a few thousand metric ton out of government reserves for the last few months anyway. But, China is really continuing to struggle with this sort of deflationary sort of trend. There's a lot of questions over what they're going to do with their economy, with their currency, and with trade with the US as we
Yeah.
move forward, and that's not really helping either. So that's the end of point
Well,
two.
and
I'll
again,
stop there. Go.
no, well, again, just to add to that, just because we have mentioned it in the past, is, like you said, well, many times we've said now that, this buying that we've seen from China, that potentially it's front running tariffs, but potentially it could equally be them trying to, they need the crop, and also they want to keep Trump sweet when it comes to power
Yes.
by being there and being a buyer of,
Yeah.
and just trying to keep that trade flowing, because if they start bulking at US produce, it gives Trump more ammunition to start talking hawkish on
And
tariffs.
it's one of the things that I think we end up seeing potentially in corn. A lot of folks are trying to say that China's corn imports will fall below 10 million metric ton, and that's
Yeah.
possible. Like, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, there are a lot of folks that I trust. JCI has mentioned it, Satonia Consulting. Who is China specialist on that side, where it's like, hey, we probably have some quality issues that could end up resulting in some blending. We saw this last year with their wheat. It took all summer long, we'd heard about how the wheat crop had been damaged and the wheat crop was in poor quality and all of these things. But it took until January, February, March for the buyers to suddenly be like, okay, let's get back in. Now, the biggest problem that we have, right, is you can't really increase your imports if you're trying to battle a deflationary cycle. And so I don't know how we solve that. But it's definitely going to be something that continues to kind of lead this market by its nose and could create some interesting dynamics after the first of the year if these physical buyers decide to come in. Now, Brazil in the short term does have some bushels that they're pushing into the market. Part of the initial drop in currency had increased farmer selling. And so they could pick up some of that short-term demand here, especially if they put it into the market cheaper. And so that's going to be something to watch. But what China does here over the next couple months, really, and I think they could be slow rolling some of their demand simply because then, if they know they have to buy it anyway, why not wait 2 months and like you said, have it be an olive branch? Like,
Yes.
I'll
Yeah.
wait
Yeah.
two
Yeah. That's a
months,
great.
prices get cheap. You know what I mean? And prices are only going to get cheaper because everyone's talking about how I have no demand or no desire to own. And now all of a
Right.
sudden January 20 whatever comes and look at me doing all these cool things.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um,
Here I am again.
yeah, exactly. We're best friends. And so that'll be the thing that I'm going to be watching, especially because Trump did say, yesterday or the day before, where like Xi may come to the inauguration. Like, you don't know, we might be, like we might be besties here on the WhatsApp. So we'll see what happens there, and on that'll be something that we watch. And then part three, and the final one, and something that not a lot of folks have kind of been talking about. In my bar chart article this week, I talked about how basis and the need for cash and some of these things with farmers is probably going to result in some expedited pushing of bushels into the pipeline, and mid part of the reason why you've seen such tremendous farmer selling of corn, especially here, over the last month or so. And so we did learn yesterday that part of the continuing resolution, was going to carry with it some farmer economic aid. And so we're really kind of uncertain as to what exactly that'll pencil out. But the initial proposal was
Right.
$100 an acre for corn, $50 an acre for beans, and then so much for wheat and some of these other things. If we do see another influx of cash, and I'm not saying, I'm not saying that this will be a broad brush sort of thing, but if a grower who's struggling and is looking at having to turn bushels into cash after the first of the year suddenly is able to kind of tap into 100 and some odd thousand, maybe a couple 100,000, depending on what their limitations are on what they're able to receive, it does change the bushels. It does change to a certain extent how much has to be moved, and
Right.
when it has to be moved, and the value at which a grower is wanting to move it. And so that could create a pretty interesting and dynamic in this market if we do see, growers able to kind of wait a bit. I'm not saying that I mean, this is all developmental, and I gotta, kind of talk some more with some growers and things like that. But you see a little bit of cash there, and it is going to be one of those things. As soon as it hits their pocket, it's going to someone else. Like, it's not like the farmer's
Yes.
not going to sit on it. Like, there are
No,
bills
exactly.
due,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah. Right.
they're going to be,
Unfortunately, you got
yeah,
to spend
yeah,
money.
it's going to work right way through. So, but it will be something to watch, and it could kind of create some interesting dynamics. And we did see E15 approved, or would be worked into it, year-round E15. And so that could help with some build out of infrastructure down the road, but probably not a major needle mover.
Right.
But so that's it. That's our 3 points for your
Well,
hump day.
well, I have possibly we'll call it a fourth point
I
that
like
I'm going
it.
to just throw at you because I saw you tweet
Yeah.
it, and it's something that I've never even considered before. But the South African, I was going to say South African rain situation, but more of a lack of rain situation.
Yeah.
So I saw you post. Was it a post from Nico?
Yep. Yep.
Um,
From AIQ, they're great.
oh,
Check them out. The Easy News Group, folks for ag, they're awesome with weather and some of these other things. But yeah, he had posted about the one place to be paying attention to, or another place to be
so
paying attention to.
So this is so South Africa's status in the market is, I have no idea. So tell me,
Yeah.
are they a big exporter then? And is this something that we really need to be watching and could have an impact on the prices we see trading on like the CME and stuff like that, and also physicals?
Yeah, I wouldn't put them at a major, exporter into the world market or a major supplier of corn, though they are a relatively decent demand center. I'm pulling up the most latest just to kind of give insight into it, because last year, one of the things that we had seen, South Africa was kind of part of the club, and one of the things that I was screaming about this summer, and you can ask anyone, I'm just like, are we not paying attention to what's going on in South Africa, Ukraine, the EU? You know what I mean? Like, there were so many different places around the world that are relatively decent corn producers, or at the very least demand centers, that um, you know were struggling with
Yeah,
production and some of these other things. And so South Africa has grown into, not a large exporter by any means, but in the 2022-23 crop year, they were around 3 to 4 million metric tons, worth of exports. So just over 120 some million bushels, for our
right,
U.S. listeners. And then they had a production drop. They went from production of 17 million metric ton to about 13 million metric ton last year. And that not only reduced their exports and their export potential, but it's also setting them up as a possible importer of corn. And so it's not necessarily the lack of supply out of them that could swing things. It's more of going from, an exporter of 2 to 3 million metric ton to an importer of 3 to 4 million metric ton, and that overall swing of 7 million, that the world, it's not hard to quantify, but the world doesn't realize that it creates this little gap. And that's part of why
no,
you've seen such strong corn exports. Like I was saying, is it's the little ones that went from a couple million of extra exports, or 5 million of extra exports, to needing a couple million of imports.
yeah,
It's the EU that's looking at a really slow export pace and probably needing 10 million metric ton of corn to help blend out what it's got.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so there'll be a lot of little issues to pay attention to, and South Africa is just one to toss on your radar.
Well, I'm glad it wasn't a stupid question then.
Absolutely not. I already said that. There's no such thing as
Woo.
stupid questions here.
Well, I put that to the test. But anyway,
I used to
you
work,
know
I
when to
used to,
laugh at that bit. Um,
no, I used to have employees at the
yeah,
elevator who
all
did
right,
that
all
joke.
right.
Like my
All right,
elevator
all right.
managers always
Well,
did
look,
that.
on that note, before you slag me off anymore, right, Angie, thank you as always for being absolutely wonderful. Listeners, thank you so much for tuning in, and we will catch you all tomorrow.
We'll be
Goodbye.
back. Yeah. Have a good one.
See you later.